It's perhaps no surprise that the most peaceful nations on earth also tend to be the happiest and the most prosperous. We need peacefulness, it seems, to truly thrive. You're listening to the Eudaemonia podcast. I'm Kim Forrester, and today it's time to pay tribute to peace.
Welcome to Eudaemonia, the podcast that is all about flourishing. Plug in, relax, and get ready for the goodness as we explore the traits and practices that can help you thrive in life. With your host, Kim Forrester.
Jo Berry is a British peace activist, public speaker, and founder of the non-profit organisation Building Bridges for Peace. She is the daughter of the Honourable Sir Anthony Berry, who was killed by the IRA in the Brighton hotel bombing of 1984. In the year 2000, Jo met with Patrick McGee, the man convicted with planting the bomb, and this meeting kick-started a decades-long campaign for peace and conflict transformation. It's an absolute honour to be connecting with Jo today to explore how we can draw upon empathy, acceptance, and reconciliation to generate greater peace in our lives and in our world. Jo Berry, it's such a delight to connect with you. How are things with you today?
Things are really good, and I'm very excited to be speaking with you.
I'm absolutely honoured to have you here on the Eudaemonia podcast. Let's start with what peace means to you, Jo. What does it feel like when you have truly found peace in your heart? Or is this something that you're still sort of searching for?
You know, when I was younger, I thought peace was something that I achieved and then that was it. Now I see that peace is a journey. And because I engage with life, because things happen, because I hear about trauma, or I meet people who are upset, or I hear about injustice, or I get angry, or, you know, my daughter's having a hard time, I realize that it's a journey, and it's a journey all the time, being mindful of what's happening with me emotionally, what are the thoughts I'm having, engaging with my thoughts and emotions, and all the time transforming and working with how I am. And actually, I don't even want to achieve peace now as a state, because I want to feel passionate. I want to feel upset when I hear about suffering and injustice. And so it's more now what I want to be able to do is find a way to always transmute and transform the feelings and work for peace, work to create a better world. So it's definitely, the emphasis has definitely changed for me.
I think that peace is just one of those states that we perhaps pursue with the idea that we're going to make it. It's a goal and then we'll have it forevermore. I think happiness is another one of those things. Is peace therefore something that you consciously realign with whenever you can and whenever it's appropriate to do so?
I think that's what it is. You know, for me, peace is about seeing the humanity in everyone. Peace is about accepting everything as it is, not wanting to change the past, but it's not, you know, it's really not there all the time. Whenever I give my talks, I talk about the times when I do get angry and want to blame and want to make someone wrong and me right, you know, and have to go through the whole process again.
Well, perhaps there's a message in that, Jo, the fact that being at peace in our life can also mean accepting when we are not at peace. Would you agree with that?
Yes, definitely. I'm very at peace that I am wounded, that I'm in the process of healing, that I live in an imperfect world. You know, there are times when I meditate, when I feel very peaceful, but then I'm also aware of what's happening in the world, and I want to be aware of what's happening in the world. And there's an acceptance. I live in an imperfect world, but in that there is also a peace.
So you're certainly still striving for something, though, even though you accepted it's an imperfect world and that you will have these unpleasant emotions as well. You are striving for greater peace in your life and in the lives of people in the world. Do you feel, therefore, that peace is something that is it a capability that we can expand within ourselves and certainly within our societies?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I wake up every morning wanting to bring something positive into the world, wanting to empower young people, want to support people in their post-conflict healing. Whatever it is, I want to make a difference in the world every single day. You know, my father was killed in a terrorist attack when I was 27. I'm now 62, and that's been true, you know, every day since.
Listening to your story and hearing more about what you've gone through, I can see that peace is perhaps actually made up of several components, things such as empathy or active listening, the honouring certainly of dignity and of human rights. Why do you feel these elements are important in seeking peace? And do you feel that peace is possible if any of those elements are missing?
Well, I suppose peace for everyone, in the sort of vaster sense of the name, is when everyone on our planet lives with safety, has enough to eat, has shelter, safe to practice their religion, their home is secure, they can grow their crops, they're not hungry, they can get along with their neighbours. There's a whole lot of different things. Peace to me is very much an active peace for the world. Now, how do we get there? And I believe we get there through, and I believe it is possible, but I think perhaps we're a long way off. But it's about everyone challenging hatred in their lives, making sure they haven't got hatred in their hearts, doing what we can to share our resources, everyone taking their part to be a positive change maker. And for each person, that's a different task, a different journey. For a young woman I'm working with in a poor part of London, as a Muslim young woman who receives a lot of judgment and hatred, for her, that's going to be a different task to someone I met in India recently who's working in Sri Lanka to heal the conflict there. We've all got our own task and what that means to us. Now, for me, it is a lot to do with empathy, because I believe that we only have an other or an enemy because we haven't heard their story. As soon as we hear someone's story, they're no longer our enemy or our other. And my work is very much to challenge the idea of an other, because I see that stopping us creating peace. Because if we see people as an other, we're not going to want for them the same safety, the same needs that we have in our own life. And so for me, empathy, and that's like an unbounded empathy, it's an empathy for absolutely everyone, is hugely important. Because if I hear your story, I'm going to want for you the same potential happiness that I want for my loved ones, the same fulfillment. So I'm going to work to make sure that you're fulfilled, that you're happy, that you have a sustainable life. So to me, empathy, and this isn't just choosing who to empathize, is with everyone, is a key. Because we really need to be able to empathize. We need to bring empathy to our politics. We need to bring empathy to our foreign policies. We need to bring empathy to, to those who are marginalized, who are oppressed in our own community, those not being heard.
I love that you talk about how it's about bringing it back to the individual. And I feel that there is a practice that is widespread and it's sort of misconceived. This idea that I am me and the world is out there. Right? I am me and society is sort of somehow divorced from and separate from myself. And I feel that it's really important for people to understand we as individuals make up a society, correct?
Yeah, definitely.
So if we want a peaceful world, therefore, and peace on earth, what a wonderful, wild concept that is. But if we truly want to live in a peaceful world, is it important for us to bring it back in to our own environments and perhaps be more willing to create peace in those smaller personal conflicts that we've got going around in our personal lives?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. We need to heal the relationships and also know the ones which, it's impossible to heal, but we can still heal the part that's to do with us, but it might not be appropriate to meet them. It's not always appropriate to meet people who we've had a negative conflict with. Sometimes it's not safe, but we can do the healing inside ourselves. It starts, I think, with us, our family, our relationships, our community, and to recognize that we all have an other. We've all inherited this idea of an other in the culture we've been born in, the country. We all can get manipulated by the media to think these people are impossible to communicate with, they are less than human. And to catch that moment when we've started demonizing people, and maybe some terrible atrocities happened and, there are people responsible. Well, are we at that moment seeing them as less than human? And that is like really understandable. It's part of the human nature, but actually, can we stop and take a few breaths and think, okay, so what's their story, and see them as different from their behavior, because I think we are more than our behavior.
What's their story? That reminds me of an interview I did last year with Marina Cantacuzino, who founded the Forgiveness Project there in the UK. Do you see forgiveness as being something that is necessary in peace building?
Actually, I don't. I might surprise you. And I think this is because I've met amazing people who are also stories in the Forgiveness Project, or who say, for whatever reason, they don't want to forgive. And yet they're doing incredible work with with bringing different sides together. And the reasons they can't forgive are to do with perhaps justice. Perhaps they don't know who killed their loved one or sent them a letter bomb or whatever it is. And it doesn't affect their ability to be compassionate. I also know people who say they have forgiven and they still have an other in their life. It's more about kind of some kind of moral righteousness. So I don't think forgiveness is an indication of anything. For some people, forgiveness is really important, and that's great. And some people it's not, and that's great.
I actually think that's quite liberating, that answer. Forgiveness is very personal and incredibly difficult sometimes, Jo. So I feel that if you are saying that we can perhaps seek peace, amplify peace, even if we can't necessarily find it all the time, and we can do so without necessarily having to find forgiveness for those who have transgressed, then that's actually a really powerful concept to carry around. Listening to your story of the first conversation you had with Patrick McGee, the man who planted the bomb that killed your father, it occurs to me that it takes a lot of courage to seek peace, Jo. It takes a lot of courage to become vulnerable in our opinions and our positions, and it takes a lot of courage to reach out and see the humanity in people that we have deemed to be the other. Are we not setting ourselves up for more hurt if we let ourselves become that vulnerable?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I took a huge risk and I could have got more hurt at my first meeting. These days I do a lot of restorative justice and restorative processes where we bring people together who've had a history of pain, whether it's neighbourhood dispute or someone killing someone through driving, having a moment of forgetfulness, or drugs, homicide, all sorts of different situations. And with there, it's all about preparation and risk assessment before you bring people together. Now, I didn't have any of that. I just did my own risk assessment. I decided that he wasn't going to kill me, so that was it, and that I was going to go. And looking back, I was extremely vulnerable, and I think that was because I wanted to make it the most likely that he would open up. It wasn't a conscious thought, I'm going to be vulnerable, but I definitely was very vulnerable, and I sort of feel I got away with it, and I'm not sure I would recommend this way of going about things. And I think I was very lucky to get away with it. But also I was very, very clear of why I wanted to meet him. And it was not to change him. It was not to get any response from him. All I wanted to do was put a face to the enemy. I wanted to be able to look into his eyes and see some of his humanity. And that was about healing me. This has all been about my own healing and how can I feel better? And so I took the risk that I would be able to look into his eyes and see something.
It's really interesting there that you advise against what you did necessarily, and you talk there about preparation and risk assessment. Do you feel that we actually need to be ready for peace in some way? Or is the time always right to become more peaceful in our lives and in the way that we interact with those we are in conflict with?
I think there's two parts to that question. I think the first part is, how do we recover after trauma, after violence, after conflict? And I think a journey is always possible if we have support. Of course, a lot of people in different countries don't have support. They're on their own. There's too many people who've gone through trauma and violence, so there's no way they can get counselling or therapy. But I think if someone can get the right kind of support, and whether that's trauma therapy or counsellor, we have different things in place in the UK, and I'm actually trying to improve it for victims of terrorism because it's not always clear that people find the right ways of getting support. But I think it's possible to go on a journey of healing, and that we know what we need and we can recover, even if we don't get justice, even if we don't know who killed our loved one, even if there's still terrible injustice around, and we can still go on a journey of healing. And I think as human beings, we have a huge potential for healing. So that's one side of it. That's just like our own process. But if someone can't heal, I'm not going to judge them, because the chances are they don't know there's a choice to not go for revenge. They don't know there's a way of being heard which will help them to move on. They can't access it. Maybe they're overwhelmed with their pain, and therefore revenge is the only option that they can see. I do understand that. And then the second part of the question is about how do we move on in respect with other people who perhaps been our other or have hurt us. And I think, to me, that's about creating safe places for people to be listened to. I created a safe place when I first met Patrick because I was also a facilitator, and I think I facilitated him to open up. Ideally, there'd be someone neutral to do that role, to create a safe places. And more than ever, we have people trained in facilitating safe places who understand what has to be in place. When we have a safe place and we can hear someone else, someone who has a different perspective, who is our other, who represents our enemy, then I think healing can happen, miracles can happen. I've seen it. As soon as there's a connection there, a recognition that, okay, your pain is my pain. It's the same. We have the same needs. We both have mothers, we both have fathers, we both have children. Then that otherness can go. And then it's about us healing together. And I think that's sort of a wonderful way forward, to recognize that, we're all healing, we're all traumatized, and we're all healing.
Well, it's interesting you're talking there about a safe space, because you're obviously talking from your perspective. Obviously, or I'm assuming, that Patrick also needed to feel safe stepping into that environment to start speaking with you. Do you feel that it needs to be a safe space for all of the parties involved?
Oh, definitely. If I'm working in my restorative justice hat on, it's just important that the guy in prison for homicide feels safe as well. That we're there to protect the space for both parties, for all the parties. And I think I did make it safe for Pat to open up. I was with him yesterday, and he's written a book, and we were going through some of the parts where he talks about me, and he's talking about his moment of epiphany, which happened at the first meeting. And that epiphany was when he stopped justifying and stopped talking about we, and he himself became vulnerable. And I think that epiphany, he would say he was disarmed by my empathy. And if I'd gone in there arguing, I'm right, you're wrong, you're a bad person, then he would have stayed. And for him, it was a safe place of righteousness. But that changed for him, and then he became vulnerable. And I think that's because he did feel safe to open up.
That's what I immediately felt from your answer there. When you're talking about a safe space for the parties involved, you're not necessarily just talking about physical safety, which is quite obvious. There's a sense here that you're talking about an environment where people feel safe to self-reflect, where people feel safe to be vulnerable, where people feel safe to have the courage to admit the choices that they've made and the consequences of those choices. Is that what you're referring to when you talk about a safe space?
Yes, a safe space is an emotional safe space. So it's a safe space in that what's going to be talked about, there are no surprises. That's very important. Safe space that you're going to be heard. There's some ground rules you're going to obey. So you're not going to start shouting at people or judging people. It's more about, I'm going to talk about my experience and the impact of what's happened on me. So there's a lot of preparation to create that safe space. I think the first time I ever meet with people, they might want to do a bit of ranting or, just like saying it as it is. But by the time we have the face-to-face, the fourth or fifth meeting, then people are more able to speak in a respectful way. And that's hugely important.
We're obviously talking about your story, which is quite profound, and the peace reconciliation that you deal with it's really quite violent and dramatic conflicts going on in the world. But it occurs to me that if we have these smaller conflicts that are going on in our families or in our communities, in our workspaces, does it pay for us to create, or at least attempt to create, that kind of safe space where we can come together and trying to resolve these conflicts through peaceful resolution?
Oh, definitely. There's a lot of work being done about creating businesses to be more restorative, because that's going to impact on the emotional well-being of everyone that works, reduce the stress, reduce conflict, and improve the well-being, which has got to be good, because then people will work harder, they'll want to come to work. So I think it's really, really important to create restorative processes, and that can be have a safe space where people can bring their conflicts, to find ways so people can challenge each other. I think challenging is is a really important part of this. So it's not about just accepting people's behavior, however inappropriate it is. It's about finding ways to challenge so people can choose to change rather than being told to change. I think the old way is like we make people change by force, and that does not enhance self-esteem or enhance well-being. But we can challenge people in such a way that they hear the impact of what they've done, and then they themselves can decide, how to change and what they need for those changes to be implemented.
We've sort of skirted around this question a little bit, but I just want to go straight to the core of the question here. In your experience, Jo, which way does peace flow? So do we need peaceful environments in order to experience some form of inner peace? Or do you feel it's more important to find peace in our hearts that can then sort of ripple out to create peace in the world around us?
I think all of it. I mean, we need to, I guess, start with ourselves. Start with giving up revenge, start with noticing when we blame people, starting with asking, what do I need right now in order to heal? But then we also need to create peaceful structures. There's a lot of violence in our institutions. So how can we change that? I was with some young people yesterday from different parts of the world. They were talking about the situation at home where, it's the violence comes from their politics. And I can see it also in my country. So how can we change it there? But I think it's all about relationships. We have to create the relationships and change the relationships. And then that will move from grassroots to those that can make decisions.
Well, let's go there, because many countries spend far more on war than they do on peace. In fact, I believe there's only 1 or 2 nations on the planet that actually have a ministry of peace. What can we do as citizens, Jo, to influence more peaceful policies at a governmental level? Or is there nothing you feel we can do?
Yeah, that's the question I'm asking myself. And as you say, we spend far more money on war, and we make money out of weapons, which I just think is just appalling. So how can we change that? So I'm part of an international network creating different departments of peace around the world. And I would love to do more myself to bring empathy into politics. So there's organizations that are working in that area, and I'm linking with them. And I think it's important to support people who are out there working grassroots non-violently to change the politics in their country. That's one thing we can do, is to find the people. We can't all be out there demonstrating. We need to be very creative in our non-violence as well. We need to find different ways of challenging any kind of hatred, and we need to be supporting the people, finding the organizations that are working in that arena and support them, and never give up hope. These days with social media, there's a lot we can do to challenge the hatred on Twitter, to find the people who are having a hard time and support them. And every day, just what can I do to bring more love and compassion into the world on every level? It's got to be the question.
For me, it always comes down to what we're choosing to amplify. A lot of people will see a post that they totally disagree with. It's hateful, or it's full of violent language, and their reaction will be to share that post. And I find that amusing / disappointing, because I think we need to understand that what we share, we are amplifying. Would you agree?
Oh, that's a lovely way of putting it. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. It's about amplifying those that are doing really good work, and that's where you come in. The work that you're doing with your podcast is, absolutely brilliant, and we need more and more. And I think actually there are more ways to hear these stories, more than ever. So we can fill our days with inspiring, uplifting stories, which give us hope, to cultivate a sense that we are changing things.
Now, you've actually known and worked alongside Patrick McGee now for nearly 20 years. Does peace become easier, Jo? Does peace become more automatic? Or do you have to keep putting in the same amount of effort on a daily basis to find a semblance of that same kind of peacefulness?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I sometimes feel as my self-awareness grows, it kind of almost gets harder, gets more subtle. But then also it does get easier. The amount of times that recently I've gone into full-blown blaming someone and hurt someone, it's probably less, but I can still Actually, I'm not sure that's true. I remember even recently I did something that really hurt all my daughters. So I'm not sure that it does get any easier. Yes, in that I think I'm happier in myself and my self-esteem has grown. So I've got a foundation there that's much stronger, and my self-esteem and my self-care grows every day. So that makes it easier. But I can't stop watching out for the moments when I'm caught unawares and I'm judging someone or making someone less than human. I still have that there, and maybe I'm someone who always will. I don't think that's true for everyone, but it's certainly true for me.
You've been criticised by people from the very beginning for actually trying to reconcile with Patrick, or for reconciling with Patrick McGee. Why do you feel that people prefer conflict and division over peace-seeking and reconciliation? Is this something that we sort of fall in automatically? Are we used to it? Or is it inherent in our nature to create conflict?
Yeah, another deep, great question. I think it's the idea that we are born into a sense of our tribe, our people, our community, and we are mainly caring for most people. We just care for this group. And I think that comes perhaps from a time when we had to just look after our tribe, or we wouldn't have survived. But I think we're born with this conditioned state of only our group matters. Now, what I've done is gone outside that group and met the enemy, and this enemy actually hurt quite a lot of this community. Right? And they see it as betrayal. They see that I've betrayed that tribe. Now, from their reality, I have. I understand that. That is what I have done. But what I am saying is, what is betrayal? And what betrayal is betrayal of my heart. And my heart sees the humanity and connection with everyone on the whole global human family. I see I'm part of that. I want to go beyond this tribal way of thinking into a new way of thinking, of saying, actually, if you're hurting over there, I'm hurting because we're all connected. We all have the same humanity. I would be betraying my heart if I had an enemy. But that is like a shift, and that's a different reality. And so that it's not like one's right, one's wrong. They're just very different. And so people who come from the idea that I betrayed my father, and I've met many people like that. That I had someone say, I loved your father, therefore I can't support the work that you do. And I really, really understand that from their perspective, that is their truth. But I'm saying, let's experiment. Let's see if we can create peace, and actually that means not having an enemy. And so therefore, that's why I've done this. It's about looking at things really differently.
That's a really powerful concept for my listeners to perhaps think about, because not all of us are going to be ready for peace and reconciliation. Not all of us have the courage or even the capabilities, the skills, the knowledge to sort of seek peace in our lives and in our world. But what we can all do, Joe, is we can at least allow those who are seeking peace to do so with our approval, with our acceptance, perhaps even with our encouragement.
Well, definitely. And, with one of the hardest things for me and many other people is lack of resources. And it's very hard for me to get funding or to prove I've made an impact in the world. A lot of what I do is I do it with very tiny resources, because it's not seen as something that should be supported. So that can be hard. And I'm not the only one. I think many people doing this work can find it difficult. In terms of support, I think now I have people around me who understand and who are incredibly supportive and really get what it is that I'm trying to do. So I do feel very supported. But I think if people can find others like me, and of course, thousands, millions of people who are working to heal divided communities, and to, as you say, I love that word, amplify the work that they're doing, then I think that would be, fantastic.
The Eudaemonia podcast, Joe, is all about flourishing in life. So how has seeking peace in your life enhanced your daily experience of life? Has seeking peace with Patrick McGee inspired you to reconcile with others in your life?
Oh, it's opened so many doors to me. When I was in India last week at the Peace Conference, I just felt so happy and blessed to be meeting these incredible peace activists from around the world. I love that on Thursday I'm going to be with these amazing young people from age 17, 18, and giving a keynote for their conference. They've asked me to visit them, and I had these incredible opportunities to make a difference. And I love that I care about people and that I can amplify. I have a way of amplifying what I feel and what I think, and I get to make a difference in the world. I mean, I think that's an honor. I love that I have the inner resources now, so that when I am hurting, I know what to do. I feel my emotional intelligence has, gone up from nearly zero, like back in the 80s. I don't know where I am now. There's still way to go, but like I'm definitely emotionally, I think, quite intelligent, and that, I know how to listen. I know how to make it safe for people to open up. There's all sorts of skills that I've learned through working with Pat. I've learned about boundaries, which wasn't something I really knew about sort of pre-meeting him. It's been a crash course in learning a whole lot of things that now I can enjoy in life and pass on to others.
I love how you come alive when you answered that question. You absolutely come alive. And that's precisely why I create this podcast. I want people to understand that if we can conceive of these concepts, if we can start to integrate them, we can feel more inspired, more alive, even through the challenges of life. My last question, Joe, is one that I ask every guest on the Eudaemonia podcast. Can you offer a simple daily exercise? This could be a practice, a mantra, a ritual, something that can help my listeners feel more peaceful in their daily lives.
Yes, so I'm not someone who does the same thing every day at a certain time. Like, I like that idea, but I'm not so. But what I do is I make sure that I tell myself every day I am doing my best. Every emotion I have is understandable, and I am transforming my pain into my passion for peace and my ability to be compassionate. I think all the pain that we have it's like an alchemy, can be turned into becoming more passionate. So there is a purpose to having all the negative feelings, but without telling myself, I am doing my best. I approve of myself. I love myself. I have self-worth. Without those positive messages, I wouldn't be able to do the work that I do. I mean, you said earlier on about, being courageous. Well, I felt such fear, such pain, but it's always saying, I can work with this. This is understandable. Right now, I am terrified. This is understandable, but I am doing my best. And sometimes it's baby steps. So those that are struggling right now, I'm asking, what's the baby step you can take today? And it can be just to say, I know what I need and I am doing my best. And today I might reach out to one person. And that's enough.
Well, that is truly beautiful. And I can see that it's because peace is about seeing the humanity in others. But what you're saying there is perhaps we can start by seeing the humanity in ourselves and accepting it.
Definitely. It starts with seeing the humanity in ourselves. And I think we're so easy to be hard on ourselves, but actually to go, we are all doing our best right now with what we've inherited.
Jo Berry, if people want to learn more about you, the work you do, perhaps help support you in your drive for greater peace and reconciliation around the world, where can they go to find out more?
I have a website for my charity, buildingbridgesforpeace.org, and they can contact me there. I am developing my own website, but they can write to me at buildingbridgesforpeace.org.
Jo Berry, just an honour and a delight to have you here on the Eudaemonia podcast. Thank you for gifting your time and your wisdom. I truly appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It's been amazing. I feel very blessed.
As Martin Luther King Jr. once said, peace is not merely a distant goal that we seek, but a means by which we arrive at that goal. You've been listening to the final episode of the Eudaemonia podcast, Season 5. I'll see you back here again for Season 6, kicking off in late April. In the meantime, if you'd like to learn more about how to live a truly flourishing life, check out my Instagram page, I am Kim Forrester, or visit eudaemoniapod.com for more inspiring podcast episodes. I'm Kim Forrester. Until next time, be well, be kind to yourself, and be a beacon of peace.